Alrighty, everybody, and welcome to the Problem Solver Politics live stream for tonight, this lovely Monday. I was going to say it was the 16th of November, but it's also the beginning of our third election night week, so I hope you guys are all happy about that. But seriously, I want to get into a couple little things. I mean, there's some closer breaking news we can get into a little bit as well. There's not a whole lot going on with Iran and the president and stuff like that. But I thought this was going to be a interesting story to talk about because this is definitely something that is... Well, actually, before we get into it, I hope you guys all had a great weekend. It was a big weekend for me. Just kidding, it wasn't. New Call of Duty came out, and that was literally all I did. But hey, one weekend a year where I don't do anything because of Call of Duty is not the worst thing. So, anyway, over the last few... You could say months, but really in the coming day or so, I mean, I kind of joked this is like the beginning of the third election night week, but it's still kind of in limbo. However, talk about what a President Biden will do in his first 100 days, kind of looking forward to Biden being sworn in, what happens then. We're starting to get to that point. And one of the things that has came up in the last day or so recently, and there's been a lot of discussion around, and again, discussion around this for a while, is the idea of the federal government forgiving or canceling student debt or something of the sort. So I wanted to go through really quickly this, and then we'll get into a couple other things as well about this. So first of all, this is from today. Chuck Schumer says that Biden could forgive $50,000 in student debt with executive order. Of course, $50,000 per student, not just $50,000 from the $1.3 trillion off the top. It would be actually probably quite a lot of money added up. So we'll get through a little bit more of what his actual comments are. So he says that I have a proposal with Elizabeth Warren that the first $50 of debt be vanquished, said Schumer. And we believe that Joe Biden can do that with the pen as opposed to legislation. Basically, yeah, kind of pretty simple. Executive ordering away $50,000 in debt. Now, this is one thing I think is interesting, and they mentioned here in the article, but there seems to be some weird numbers here. I want to go through and pull up what Joe Biden himself said. So where is Joe Biden actually on this? So if you pull up Joe Biden's right here, and I'll go to the top, show you guys what this is. This is the Biden-Harris, the Biden plan for education beyond high school. Now, buried in here, he has the loan forgiveness plan. And it's kind of interesting, and I wanted to talk about this for a little bit, because... the discussion online, of like, hey, what if like that $85,000, like 85 is a little high. Some people definitely are closer to that. But what if that $65,000 in debt you had, boom, we erased it tomorrow? Now, there's some realities there that we won't get into, right? But first of all, as far as I know, looking around, this is the official Joe Biden plan for what he's actually going to do for loan forgiveness. As far as coming in or as far as a candidate, obviously this stuff can change. But let's go through this. Make loan forgiveness work for public servants. Public servants do the hard work that is essential to our country's success, protecting us, teaching our children, keeping our streets clean and our lights on, and so much more. But the program designed to help these individuals serve without having to worry about the burden of their student loans, the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program, is broken. Biden will create a new simple program which offers $10,000 of undergraduate or graduate student debt relief for every year of national or community service up to 5 years. Individuals working in schools, government, and other nonprofit settings will be automatically enrolled in this forgiveness program. Up to 5 years of prior national or community service will also qualify. I'm assuming that means for a total of 10. Additionally, Biden will fix the existing Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program by securing passage of the What You Can Do for Your Country Act of 2019. Biden will ensure adjunct professors are eligible for this loan forgiveness. That's it. But as far as I know, that's basically... Now, there's a lot of other stuff in here for making school cheaper up front, which I honestly really does seem to need to be the end around. Like, it isn't like things were just supposed to get here, and now we have to deal with the mess. Things were never supposed to get here. A lot went wrong to get here. But we'll go back through this. Now, first of all, someone pointed out in chat, I think traffic topic, public servants, aka the government that doesn't do their job. Exactly. I mean, a lot of government, a lot of blue union workers will be getting their student loan forgiven, and nobody else, basically. Which is interesting, right? It's a very interesting way, but there isn't any real talk. Now, I'm sure Biden has said things here and there. I'm sure on his website, Biden's not promising to just wipe out student loan. I mean, nothing as kind of, ambitious is just, I mean, literally, as Chuck Schumer says, with the pen, I mean, just signing. I love that, by the way. I understand there's log jams in the government and you got to get stuff done. But like, dude, like, I'm sure a lot of you guys have heard some of the arguments against canceling student loan is more or less just being like, well, I paid mine. Why shouldn't, why do other people get theirs forgiven and not me, right? My only point I'm bringing up on that is if that is done by executive order and it's like, yeah, you don't get a say in this. We just did it, by the way. That is what's going to anger people. Find a way to pitch it to people in a way where they agree with it, right? Like, I don't know. I'm not going to get too much into my thoughts on that quite yet, but just one thing that kind of just stuck out to me. It's like, I think that might be what really upsets people, is if it's like, it's not like we voted on this and you guys took it to the House. It's like, seriously, the Biden administration just waves with a pen and says, oh yeah, it's done. But I don't know. I don't think it'll happen. It doesn't sound like Biden. However, there's a couple weird, interesting things about this. Now, one, and they actually bring this up in a article here from Fox Business. So I want to bring this up. So, and this is again on the speaking similarly about the Elizabeth Warren plan to cancel some student debt. But this is actually kind of an interesting wrinkle and honestly something I did not know. Someone pointed it out on Twitter a little bit ago and then I found it in this article as well. So here we go. However, some remain skeptical of the long-term economic benefits, including former chairman for President Obama's White House Council of Economic Advisors, Jason Furman. Obviously, well, I was going to say he's probably a Wall Street shill, but he's not a right-wing Wall Street shill, right? I'm just in jest. I don't know much about this individual, except for he worked for Obama. However, he makes a good point. Come to Monday that student loan forgiveness would only offer a small positive multiplier in the immediate future rather than any large economic benefit in the long term due to the fact that forgiveness is taxable. Now, in his tweet, he gets a little more specific, which is kind of... I'm not a tax attorney, but yes, this does seem to be the gist of it. There is some ambiguity about whether my claim that student loan debt forgiveness would be taxable. Regardless, bigger point is that SR multiplier is linked to the cash flow, so at best, it's a small positive regardless, giving someone $10 a year for 10 years, and they won't spend $100 more today. Anyway, the large thing I want to get into that is that, so we can get into the weeds, but there's just like some weird stuff you have to kind of deal with to get through the actual, what's the word I'm looking for? The actual, like, the real life nuts and bolts of it. Like, will this be taxed? Now, and they mentioned this individual here. I think I have it pulled up on Twitter. He goes on to bring up, Bharat Rumamarty. I butchered that. I apologize, whoever it's pronounced. But he's a current member of the Congressional Oversight Commission and managing director of the Corporate Power Program. He brings up in this Twitter thread some interesting ideas. Basically, it doesn't seem to be like, yes, you will have to pay taxes if student loan debt was erased, but like there's just some nuts and bolts here that once you get closer to working it out, got to be figured out, right? He mentions here there is some workarounds for it, depending on how they classify technically. But yeah, if you literally go to the IRS website, they mention on the IRS website as well the idea that while generally speaking, if your debt is forgiven, a lot of the exceptions for when it would not be taxable will include student loans. So there's some specific to student loans. See if I can pull it up for you guys. I mean, it's just boring stuff on the IRS website. But there's just specific things. There's certain student loans you could take out, for example, let's say like it gets to the program Biden mentioned where if you're working in civil service or if it's like I'm taking out this loan to work this specific government job or civic job, they'd forgive it. They wouldn't make you pay loans on that. However, it appears that as it's set up right now, they would have to do an additional thing to make sure you wouldn't be taxed on it because here's the thing. Like if I don't have $65,000 to pay in student loans, I probably don't have the cash to pay the taxes on if I had $65,000 in loans just paid for me today. But we'll see. And one second, MTSLR, right? That's what I want to get into the second issue there. But also just a couple other things I wanted to touch on. There's already been some movement as far as people have brought up the fact that Joe Biden has been in government for a long, long, long time, and forgiving student loans has never really seemed to have been what's what I'm looking for? Pet project of Joe Biden. You know what I mean? Like it's never really been something that Joe Biden seems to have been working very hard to get done. But what is interesting is that there's already movement right now relating to the pandemic on it, and it was done by the Trump administration. I mean, I'd have to imagine if the Trump admin is willing to make some of these moves. I'm going to pull it up for you guys right now. And there were a lot of them, by the way, were COVID relief. This is from federal student aid. So originally this went into effect, I want to say back March 27th. So here we go. Currently, all loan payments... So on March 20th, 2020, the Secretary of Education directed the Office of Federal Student Aid to provide the following relief on ED-held federal student loans, suspend payments, stop collection on defaulted loans, and set interest rates to 0 for a period of 60 days. I believe that has been extended, so interest rates for student loans that were held by the Education Department have actually been frozen at 0, I believe, since March 27th of this year, all the way through the end of the year, December 31st. So this is something that, again, like the Trump admin, again, they mentioned here on August 8th, President Trump and his directive secretary to continue the suspended loan payments, stop collections, and waive interest until December 31st. So for essentially, March to December, like the end of March to end of December, what is that, like 7 months, majority of this year, or longer than that, vast majority of this year, there has been no real collections. No actual collections, but payments have not been frozen, and also interest have been frozen at 0. So interesting to note. I mean, just the coming prospects of this being something that does or does not happen. It's just to want to note that it's not like the government's doing nothing, especially if this was phrased as being something for a pandemic recovery thing. I guess is my larger point there. Being just kind of like waving the wand for giving student loans because, whatever, we like you. I don't see that ever happening. But part of like some like comprehensive economic stimulus to combat the pandemic, some packaging like that, it does seem like there's some movement already now in taking care of that. So that is interesting to look into. There is kind of one other thing I wanted to go before we get into some of the arguments back and forth about it, and I want to pull it up. Do I have it here? Might not. Might have to go back to that in a second. Sorry, I pulled up all the Iran stuff as well. I want to talk about that a little bit, but not a whole lot's happened about that, so I'm just flipping through the tabs to get to the one I want. However, seriously, sometimes tabs just disappear on you. Here we go. So this was an article I thought was interesting. This was published November 12th, a few days ago. Again, like this conversation around, okay, President-elect Biden now, once inaugurated, what's he going to do? Student loans came out. This is from Forbes, from a contributor, Mark Kantrovitz. Joe Biden can't forgive your student loans, or can he? President-elect Joe Biden has made several ambitious proposals for student loan forgiveness that may be stymied by legislative opposition. Nevertheless, there may be a few ways he can implement at least part of his student loan forgiveness agenda. And they list some things. So they go through some of this, like the bullet points. And I'll go through them again. It's worth bringing this stuff up because this is kind of important, and this gets to kind of one of the big conversations I want to have around this. So student loan debt has grown to record levels, spurring calls for loan forgiveness. According to the Federal Reserve's Board G19 report, there's a total of $1.7 trillion in student loan debt outstanding as of September 30th, 2020. This includes both federal and private student loans. I believe private makes up in like 100 billion, 132 billion. There you go, private student loans. But I mean, when you're talking about government money, it's like, like with athletes, you're talking about like pro athlete contracts, and you're like, what, only $3-4 million a year? They couldn't make that work somehow. And it's like, for most people, that's crazy. But for athletes, when you're talking about governments, it's like only 132 billion. That's nothing. 132 billion out of 1.7 trillion. It's nothing, right? So that's private. A lot of this is actually held by the U.S. Department of Education, including $1.29 trillion in the direct loan program. So, not to downplay private student loans. $132 billion is a lot of. I'll tell you what, $132 billion in student loans is a whole hell of a lot of lives that could be changed one way or the other. I don't want to downplay it. My only point was the numbers are just that astronomical. The numbers are so big that when you're talking about $100 billion, it's like, yeah, but that's just such a small part of the pie. We could barely even focus on it. So anyway, here's some of the proposals. To just forgive $10,000 in federal student loan debt per borrower, which has been up to the last 3 or 4 days. Chuck Schumer out of $50,000, right? You could forgive all tuition-related undergraduate federal student loan debt for borrowers who attended public colleges and universities or historically black college universities, or MSIs. Eligibility will be limited to borrowers who can earn less than $125,000 per year. Or who earn less, not who could. Graduate student loans and loans borrowed to attend private colleges and universities will not be eligible. I think, here's the problem with that second one, right? I guess we can go through all these. The first one, honestly, I think as some kind of pandemic relief, just taking off the top of everyone's student debt. If packaged economic is stimulus relief, right? And it's oh, we're not getting rid of student loans. It's just, the pandemic. We got to help people somehow. Maybe you could package it that way. Trying to set it up where it's well, only if you go to the deserving, if you went to a school that deserves for you to have your debt paid. Yeah, but if you took it out to go to some private, no, I don't know. I think that will again lead animosity, but you'll notice that does seem to be the common thread. Honestly, there isn't a whole lot of these where people really start bringing up economic issues. There isn't a whole lot of people say, we can't cancel the debt. Where will the money go? Now, I have to imagine, even if it is just the Department of Education, and again, when you're talking about federal governments, even $1 trillion is we can kind of work around that. But still, if $1.7 trillion hypothetical dollars just get erased from the government, someone somewhere has to lose out on something, right? Anyway, we'll get through these last few. Switch public service loan forgiveness from a back-end loan forgiveness program to an upfront loan forgiveness program. Instead of forgiving the remaining debt after 120 qualifying payments, the new program will forgive up to $10,000 per year for up to 5 years. Again, it's just kind of wand-waving stuff. Tax-free forgiveness of the remaining federal student loan debt after 20 years of payments in a new income-driven repayment plan. 20 years! Jesus. You know what? That's perfect. That's exactly what I want to talk about. That is the nightmare hell scenario we've created with student loans. 20 years. Oh yeah. If after 20 years of payments, we will tax-free forgive the remaining federal debt. That is insane. Let's read the whole thing. The new income-driven repayment plan cuts the monthly student loan payment from 10% of discretionary income to 5%. So they would lower the payments. The definition of discretionary income will switch from the amount by which income exceeds 150% of the poverty line to the amount by which income exceeds $25,000. Again, that sounds like funny money numbers. That sounds like the worst one to me. Maybe someone in chat's better at math than I am. That sounds like the absolute worst one to me. If someone came to me and said, "Hey, we're going to lower your monthly payments. We're going to double the term of the loan. And it's going to be based on," how do they word this? It's going to be based on income exceeding whatever money you make over $25,000 a year, we take 5% of for 20 years. That sounds like the mafia, does it not? Jesus. 25 grand. That's God, man. Depending on where you live, if you wanted to get your degree and move to a big city, that's Los Angeles rents easy. One of my friends sent me a picture of someone renting out a hallway in Canada for $500 a month. Rent alone could just be a minimum of 13 grand a year you need just for rent, not counting utilities. See what I mean? It adds up quickly. Maybe that would be better, but Jesus, I don't want that one. And then restoring bankruptcy rights to student loans, which I believe, ironically, Joe Biden fought against, thereby allowing borrowers in extreme financial distress to discharge their student loans in bankruptcy. So, there we go. There is a couple super chats. Carden Ellis. Look who it is. Even I would vote for Biden if he could fix Los Angeles traffic. Womp womp. That is the worst. And cell phone reception, can't commute to my own studio 20 miles away due to traffic or listen on the way. There we go. Even from the chat, Carden finds a way to kvetch. But anyway, just kidding, man. However, this is one of the things I want to talk about, though, getting back to the idea of how this student loan system works. This the fact that why are we here, right? Now, I'm not going to, I didn't write the book on student loans. Ironically, thankfully, for me at least, I don't have any student loans. I don't owe any money on this stuff. Whatever happens, happens. I didn't pay any student loans either, so I'm kind of one of those people where I'm like pretty ambivalent. I'm like, hey, if the only person getting screwed here really is the Department of Education, now, if the Department of Education passes them getting screwed on to everyone else, that's not great, but like, I don't really care. I have to imagine, I don't think the government just takes an L. I'm pretty sure they pass that L on to us every single time. But what bothers me is this is a problem created by the government. Like, let's get back to what Trump did, right? And I'm not saying, Trump's the greatest doing this, but the White House, right? The White House decided in a move to kind of stabilize what was going on with the pandemic to freeze interest rates, right? Because, yeah, obviously, you don't want interest around it, but they lowered, so they didn't freeze interest, they lowered it to 0% and then froze it. But here's the thing. And let me know in chat if you guys have a good answer for this. Why does the Department of Education need, really any interest on a loan they give for someone to go to school? I understand if I'm a bank and I'm giving you money to buy a boat, but I gotta get something out of this. I'm not doing this out of the goodness of my heart. However, they kind of frame it a little bit, the government, like they're doing this out of the goodness of their heart. Like you have to pay it back, right? They don't just give you the money. It is a loan, but they do kind of try to phrase it. We want to help you out. We want to make sure everybody can go to school. And we're going to help you out, and we'll make sure no one gets turned down. Just come to us. We'll give you a loan. And then all of a sudden, it's like they start coming to you for like points. Like, okay, we need like 3% at least. It's like, what? They're like, oh yeah, you have to pay this much. Okay, for how long? No, it's like that scene in the Mafia movie. It's like, it's like $500 a month. It's like, really? For how long? No, that's the interest. Then you have to pay the principal on top of that. Why is that not something we've done already? It's just been like either ridiculously low interest rates, fractional interest rates, just so it's like you got to pay back somewhat. I understand they want to get the money back. You have to pay back. So maybe come up with something. I understand some incentive system for it has to exist. I'm not that naive. But we're literally there's words for this. The Mafia has, right? Like having the problem that literally exists now, which is that young people are so far in debt. I think I saw a tweet where a nurse said she asked one of her young patients what their net worth was. And the little girl said $1. And the nurse laughed to herself and she's like, well, my net worth is negative $37,000. Like, how does it make any sense to create a system where you send your young people, you send them off to school to get their big brains made even bigger so they can come and teach us regular people how big brained they are, and you're straddled with more debt than you're going to be able to pay off and interest on top of it. So this is like compounding interest rates on some of these loans, like for kids to go to school. Doesn't make any sense to me. I don't get it. It feels like the country is harming itself, intentionally handicapping its young people. You would think they'd want the inverse, right? How about this? How about instead of punitive incentives or kind of, instead of taxing you an interest rate for every month you have not paid this loan off in full, I get that's a little bit simplifying, but you see my point, right? Why is there not incentives to pay the loan off sooner that are like positive based? Maybe tax credits. Hey, maybe if you're responsible paying your student loan off on time, the government will help you out with like getting a house and stuff. Right? Maybe, honestly, I kind of like Joe Biden's plan. Like, hey, if you want to like volunteer and basically get $10,000 a year, there's a way now that the government, now honestly, this is bad too. Don't get me wrong. This isn't great. But I would be even better off. I'd be happier with the federal government basically saying, okay, if you volunteer working for the state or the government or just in an approved way, we will basically pay you and just pulling off of your student loan. Kind of what Biden proposed, right? Or it's like if you work for the government, or maybe if you volunteer on the side, maybe you don't actually get paid like a check every week. However, if you volunteer X amount of hours a week for a year, you just get that money taken off. Like, there's ways to go about this that aren't just basically burying people in debt. And the thing is, now we're having these discussions about like, should we just like get rid of the debt? Should we just wave a magic wand and take $50,000 per student away? You have a bunch of people saying, what the hell? I paid all my debts. It basically, it set me back a decade more or less paying this stuff off. Like, people are upset about that. Why are we here? We're here because this ridiculous program was set up in the first place. Now, I want to show you guys something. You might recognize a little bit of it. It's the, actually use the thumbnail image. I use this. But this graph shocked me when I saw it. So I'm going to pull this graph up for you. I couldn't believe it. It feels like the kind of thing that definitely shouldn't exist. We should not be living in a country with the way stuff is. And apologize 1 second. Let me get this tab pulled up again. But it's a chart showing the amount of student loan in this country, student debt in this country, and how it has increased over the years. Actually, I'm going to have to pull it up somewhere else for you guys. Anyway, it has essentially, I think I closed the tab. Everyone's going to pull it back up. But it's essentially tripled in about 12 years. Tripled the amount of student debt people hold. What's even crazier about that, I'll pull this up for you guys. This is getting so out of control that under President Donald Trump's leadership, the total amount of student loan debt held by Americans has increased by more than 16%, from $1.44 trillion to roughly $1.68 trillion in 3 years. 16% in 3 years. I mean, I'm not a numbers genius, but if it doesn't start going down soon, where does this go? Again, I'll try to see if I can pull a chart up again. I mean, it's before the economic crisis, this idea of like student loan debt being like a big kind of like a big thing holding back a lot of people, that wasn't really a thing. Just kind of wasn't. Obviously, it existed. Here we go. Just show you guys. It existed. There were student loans. But check this out. Y'all find it together. In 2006, there was about $461 billion in student loans owned and securitized that were outstanding. That number increased to $1.6 trillion heading into 2019. What happened? And let me ask something. Have colleges just are they like the best thing ever now? Like, were universities in 2006 light years behind where they are now? Are we as like a society just full of scholars? Have we become in a decade a society of intellectuals, of scholars? Do we have this abundance of just thinkers? And maybe we do have an overabundance of thinkers actually, right? But I mean, like, where's the tangible rewards from this? I'll tell you what I've noticed in the 10 years from basically graduating high school and on. It's roughly what this time scale reflects, a little bit earlier than that. I've noticed a lot of young people who own nothing, don't have homes, rent, like everything, have tons of debt they have to pay off, basically have no real, ideas and perspectives of, one day being free of this burden of debt. It's kind of almost, just baked into their head. I will always be just paying the government back. That's what I've noticed. I haven't noticed this, flourishing, oh my God, how awesome is America? Everyone goes to school. That hasn't really been the world I've seen. Here's the thing. If this were the numbers, but you could tell. If it was student loan debt's up really high in America, but I mean Americans are every American is the stereotypical Northern European architect, you know what I mean? Just we're bookworm, intellectual, smartest country, every single person you wouldn't believe. But that's not America. We're the same country I've been my whole life. However, a bunch of young people owe a bunch of money to the Department of Education. Why? They owe interest. Why? But here's the problem. You have a lot of people who were duped and paid already. Dupe's the right word. Maybe the wrong word. But there's a lot of people who already, because the system was built the way it was, if you wanted to go to school and you wanted to pay the rates that the schools had set for you, you almost kind of have to go and get a loan from the government. I understand that. It's kind of the rub. It's kind of how they build the system to work. However, in doing so, just one day having a come to Jesus moment and saying, you know what, this system sucks. We're going to get rid of it and forgive everything. How do you go back? You know what I mean? Like, how do you go, like what do they do? What do they start, like, tax, like, you get tax credits for every $1,000 you paid off in student loans from a certain, I mean, like, what do you do? Here's the one thing I do know. You'll notice, once again, the discussion around why did things get this bad? Why are things like this? Why is it being perpetuated? Why is it increased 16% in 2 years? Which, I don't know, maybe looking at this chart, that's actually a modest increase. Why are we talking about this? Why is it always just, yeah, well, you know, you can't straddle the kids with debt, we gotta absolve it. It's like, but, like, are we just going to find a new way to put debt on the next generation of kids, or are we going to talk about this? Because, especially, too, let's get back to the idea of Chuck Schumer of doing this through executive order. I mean, then you're really looking at, I mean, like, executive order, just like decree. Just I, Joe Biden, have decided there is $50,000 left of debt for everybody who is still not paid. Like, that's going to definitely anger people who feel like, well, hey, I paid in. What about me? Get this a few super chats. Adam Duffy, $5. Hey guys, just hopped in. I thought I'd chime in. My dad went to PA school and took out $70K in loans up to $160K. My mom's up to $80K from $50K. Yeah, why is that? Why is the federal government like bilking people like the mafia? Like, I don't understand. Again, if you want to buy a catamaran so you could sail around Miami Beach and look cool, I understand why a bank would say, well, you better pay us back then. We're going to put a pretty decent interest rate on this. If you want a credit card, just because you want to buy things you don't have money for, I could see the credit card company saying, if you want to go to the government and say, hey, I want to go to the schools to better myself, to better serve communities in this country, can I get some help? I don't see why they're like, yeah, just, you know, if you don't pay it off right away. Again, remember, it's $300 a week plus whatever else you got to pay off. Like what the hell, man? Anyway, Hyperballistic Drifter God, $5. 95% of these loans are issued by the federal government, and then 2/3 are sold as to private banks who receive repayment, hence high interest plus non-dischargeable. Which, again, why does that racket exactly? But why is that a racket? Why was there a racket for about, again, this thing kind of showed, this chart actually kind of charts it pretty well. For about a decade, you could just, for you know what, end of the recession, right? So like 2009, 2010 to 2020, where we are now. I mean, look at this. It's just like, it's like people learned that game where they're like, oh, the federal, these loans can't be, you can't file for bankruptcy. They're loans that people took out and they're gonna want to pay down anyway. There's, you know, student loans, you want to go to school and all that stuff. And yeah, they just pass them on and it's tough. But that's what I think. Honestly, the way things are breaking out, like just the way things are happening over these few weeks, dude, it's going to suck for Biden when he gets into the White House. It's going to suck. He's going to have everyone screaming at him. He's going to have so many problems he's inheriting. So many new problems he's going to make for himself. He's going to have a hard time, man. Maybe I'm wrong. But, like, it's just, I don't think coronavirus will be gone. He'll have to deal with that. The vaccine, the kind of, the passing off of the vaccines, he's going to have to deal with that. The economy, he's going to have to deal with that. He's already got people saying, hey, can you forgive these student loans? Chuck Schumer is basically writing checks for him, saying, yeah, $50,000, executive order, first 100 days. That's just that. That's not even talking about some news came out, you know, with tensions once again rising very strongly with Iran, which, I don't know, you might remember one of the last things the Obama administration did on their way out was sign the Iran nuclear deal. And that's coming to a head. I think the end of October, the provisions that prevented Iran from buying weapons from other countries, those embargoes were lifted at like the end of October from other countries. I mean, like, yesterday they vowed revenge for Soleimani. I mean, like, this is all going on in the background, and this is what Biden's walking into. It's gonna be tough, man. Anyway, Adam Duffy, $5 super chat, said, drop in the chat if you think Hyperballistic Drifter God is the best username on YouTube. It's up there, man. I like that one. Yeah, and then let's get to another issue, something someone brought up. Trevor Topchick brought this up. He said, Elon Musk is hiring people like crazy and doesn't care if you finished high school. and a bit anecdotal, but yeah, like these like, hotshot entrepreneurial people, this idea, and this is the other thing that isn't being discussed at all either. When you go to a bank to get a loan to buy your luxury yacht, you could probably have a pretty solid idea of the depreciation a luxury yacht's going to have, right? Like, you'll have an idea of how much that luxury yacht's going to be worth in X amount of years, right? If you get a loan to buy. I don't know. I don't even know if you get loans to buy yachts. Maybe yachts are one of those things, if you can't pay cash, you don't deserve to buy. I don't know. But you see my point. Like, if you take a loan to buy a car, for example, you can generally, maybe they'll change the body style, who knows? But you generally have an idea of, like, my car will be worth X, right? This is something else that it's hard to quantify, right? But if more schools are opening, offering more degrees, right? Like schools that already existed, maybe offering new degrees in new fields, right? All this stuff. There is going to be, and they kind of use the word, I don't want to say power creep, but there is going to be a kind of inflation almost to the worth of a degree. I'm trying to think of the word for it. But you see what I mean, right? If when I went to get my degree in X field, let's say especially computer fields, I understand there's more jobs, but I have to imagine, like, it's when you make the loan agreement for your student loan, 20 years from now, what your degree is worth in the workplace, it could vary wildly. And especially when you're seeing people, and again, I'm not speaking about like people working for Elon Musk for much, but the idea of people hiring people in, maybe not space travel, more private sector, just kind of like businesses, right? Just kind of like shops, or the idea of there being attractive jobs, people willing to hire people who don't have degrees, as the internet and just the way that they're kind of decentralizing a lot of these. Because it used to be one of the great things about getting a job and a career, about getting a degree at a university, is all the kind of auxiliary things that came with getting a degree, right? The other things you'd have to do aside from showing up to classes, the people you would meet, the interns, like all that stuff would add up and build, and it'd get your foot in and you would basically kind of get not ushered in, but there's a lot of opportunities to kind of start needling your way into the industry through whatever school you went to, right? But it's just with the internet, there's more and more opportunities opening. I'm sure there's a lot of old boys clubs you need to go to a big university, and don't get me wrong, but you see what I mean is that this stuff changes kind of radically over time. Like, a degree might be worth one thing, but then 7 years later, you're still paying it off of what it was worth 7 years ago, but that's not where the industry is anymore. And that's something else that kind of worries me a little bit. For example, as I brought up, what if you get a degree to work? What if you worked your ass off to be the best insurance underwriter you could be? You went to school, cost a bunch of money, you bought all the books, you have the biggest math brain possible, and then you lose and then like insurance underwriting, like your profession, maybe you manage people, I don't know, do that person, but you see what I mean? Like, if automation, AI, if it just leads to, again, not eradicating entire industries, but downsizing a bit, like we've seen in the stock exchange, by the way. I mean, you look at the numbers on the actual trading floor, that job is kind of gone. Now, I'm sure they found other ways to move these brokers and these different firms, but like, I think it's 80% less people on like the stock exchanges actually making trades there. Like those images from the 80s and 90s, that's all gone now. We've moved past that. However, people might be paying out the ass for a degree they got to do that, even though you can't really do that anymore. And again, it's like going to the mafia. They're going to say, I don't care. Maybe the government cares. But if you go to the government and say, shoot, I thought this degree was going to pan out a lot more, they're going to go, well, I mean, yeah, the workplace shifted. But whatever, man, you took the degree. That's what it used to cost. And let me know if I'm wrong in chat, but that's one thing that does worry me, is this idea that, like, that's harder to quantify, and you can get screwed hard on that. Like, big time. Like, you could just find situations where you got a degree to go into an industry, and it was good up front for a few years, and then technology really moved that industry away. Now, again, there's a bunch of people that went to school, right? They got student loans, they paid off their student loans, and now they have a job that has nothing to do with what they got the degree in. A bunch of people like that exist. I understand. Don't get me wrong. But just the factor that there's some industries as well where you're not going to have an exponential increase in job openings as you are for, like, for example, there's only so many museum curators in the country, But there's a lot more colleges that can offer courses that would become museum curator. There's only so many. It would almost be like if schools tried to offer courses on being an NFL head coach. Dude, there's 32 of them. That's it. Like in the world. Do you know how many people are qualified for that job and don't have it just because there's only 32 in the world? There's a bunch. And I understand it's an absurd, kind of a extreme case, but there's a lot of jobs like that where it's just realistically, there's X amount. And yeah, every year more people graduate with qualifications for it, but realistically, we just don't need that many people doing it. And again, the difficulty thing is the people administering the loan, the government doesn't care. The people who take the money, the schools, they don't care. They have no incentive to care. I mean, I believe it's worded right now. What is it? Anything you make, like the 150% or 150% times the poverty line, anything you make over that number, they get 10% of. They don't care from what. Nowhere does it say if you want to be a mechanical engineer, but you don't get a job as a mechanical engineer. If you work at Arby's, well, they're taking your Arby's money. They don't care. So I don't know. I don't want to go too far, but it just concerns me a bit that there's a lot of things compiling here to lead to coming to a head. And someone and I got to be honest, I don't think Joe Biden waving the wand and just taking $50,000 off the top is going to fix it either. There's a lot of real issues in the system, but they are not what gets addressed, unfortunately. What gets addressed is, hey, kids, you want your $65,000 debt erased? That's what gets addressed. Not, hey, kids, aren't we total POS for getting you involved in this in the first place? And maybe we should, change the way colleges accept people, colleges charge people. Is there audits on what colleges charge for? Because again, I don't know about this, but is there any audit the government does on how much a school charges in tuition if the government's giving you a loan to go there? Right? Like if the government gives you a loan to go to a school and that school is just overcharging you, they're not overcharging you, they're overcharging the government, right? Shouldn't the government say, hey, what is this? Again, I'm a bit ignorant there. I'm not huge in all this stuff. Just on the ins and outs of that. Maybe they do that. But here's the thing. I'm sure they got some BS system. But overall, I mean, I don't know. Hey, it's what it costs, man. I don't know. It goes up every year. It just goes up every year. Dude, tuitions went up at schools this semester where you're not allowed to go into the classrooms. All the buildings are closed and tuition went up. What? What is this? Is knowledge just going up that much? Are we learning that much more? Is it that much more valuable to be at, it's like Harvard, it's one of these big schools, right? Where they can just say, screw you, the rates went up. But what is this? What is this nonsense? I couldn't believe reading that. You have to pay more money than last semester, but you get way less services from us. I mean, in the business world, I've heard that referred to as the death spiral. When you increase costs and lower quality, offer less services for more money, that's like the end. That's like when it's like you're going to drive people away when you need them at your most, and you're going to collapse. But I mean, that's what worries me more than anything else. Is our education system maybe a little bit out of date? Do we maybe address it? Update it? Do we need to maybe handle some of the bloat going on as far as costs and administrative fees go? Does the government need to have some kind of better auditing system when they're giving these loans that hey, I didn't get a student loan. I didn't graduate from a four-year university, any of that stuff. However, I've heard people describe what essentially sounds like scenarios where they will literally never pay their loans off. Just how much the loan was, what the interest is, and the field they went into, the numbers just don't line up. And I'm like, why wasn't this something that wasn't more clearly sussed out up front. And every time I look into it, it generally seems to be because no one cares. It generally seems to be because the government says, well, that's how much school costs. Here's your check. And most people, like, what are you going to do? You don't get, it's not like a car. You can't go negotiate with Harvard. I mean, you're applying. You're begging these people to let you in. You're not going to show up and say, I'll tell you what. I'll go $35,000 for tuition, and let's say housing, we'll cut that in half. Like, no, you're just glad to be there, whatever it costs. Also, what does a high school kid know? Like, well, let me check my brain. Oh no, that's a fair cost. What? But again, that's all put on young people. Sorry, it just bothers me. I mean, there's a lot of young people where it was like legitimately one of the first decisions they made as an adult was, I don't want to say screwing themselves, but saddling themselves with debt for 25 years. It's like the first, like the government's like, you're 18 now, very first thing. How would you like to be forever indebted to the U.S. government? And again, I mean, I have the chart pulled up here. That's what it looks like. I also like how it kind of, it has this very uniform pattern of kind of surging, plateauing, surging, plateauing, surging, plateauing, surging, plateauing. I don't know if that's just the way this is drawn, you know, just how big the graph is and how there's a lot of things that could impact that, right? But yeah, it's almost like they kind of wait a few years and like, all right, everyone get loans again. Okay, well, kind of cool for a few years. Get loans again. Yes, well, no, of course, it's not Ivy League schools that are driving the student loan crisis. But my only point is that there's schools, and I'm sure Harvard's not the only one, where there's schools out there offering less than they normally would offer because of COVID. They're going to be asking for more money than they did the year before, too, which just seems insane to me. It doesn't make any sense. I mean, it makes sense, I guess, but no, because like schools don't like really the schools make a bunch of money on their bookstores. I mean, like, really, they make their money, I think, on like tuition and fees, you know, stuff like that. And it almost does feel like a system, right? Where it's like a drug dealer. Just get him in. And then we'll figure it out later, right? And it's like, okay, you're in school, you got a bunch of debt, and figure it out. Whatever, I don't care. Concerning. And again, though, I guess I don't feel bad for any politician because they asked for this. I didn't put this on them. They asked for it, right? But Joe Biden's walking into a lot of crazy stuff. It almost reminds me of that season of the season of The Wire. One of a guy runs for mayor, and his whole thing on running for mayor was like paying cops more and stuff. And then as soon as he gets elected mayor, he finds out that like all the schools are bankrupt. And so all the money has to be rediverted to the schools because they're bankrupt. And it feels like that's going to happen to someone eventually. Where it's like the Department of Education is going to be like, the student loan stuff's just out of control, man. We know we're not going to get a lot of this stuff back. Because the other thing, I mean, like, I wonder how much student loan, and this is sad, but I wonder how much money every year in student loan debt, money you have to pay back, is absolved because the person who owed it died. I wonder how much. It's probably a shocking number. Because that's terrible. Dying with student debt. A lot of people, though. It happens, man. Because it's just they don't. There seems to be no real. It really does feel like once you've signed off and you're at the school, you're just on your own. And I get it. You're an adult now, you know. But, like, there's a lot of people that have been in this earth a whole lot longer than 18 years who had getting loans with weird, funny numbers, getting loans for things where it's like, maybe I didn't do my math correctly or they're screwing me. You know what I mean? Like that's something that happens to all kinds of people all the time. So you think the federal government would really be advocating to not do this? I mean, having your young just burdened with just a weight of debt on them. It's just not good. It really isn't. And again, it isn't like it isn't like the kind of thing where it would be impossible to lower the cost of schools. You know what I mean? Like, it really shouldn't be impossible. I think, like, enrollments go up. Like, there's always more people that want to go. There's always more opportunities to teach. I mean, for example, I brought this up recently. I was talking before, right? The idea about the kind of like just auxiliary benefits. Like, again, like, it's always been that way. You don't just go to school to get the piece of paper that says I graduated. You're able to be a part in around lectures. You're able to go to meetings, be a part of groups. Like, you're able to kind of get involved in things in whatever niche or industry you want to go into. But however, I'm interested in Napoleon and the French Revolution. You could pull up hours and hours and hours and hours of actual university, like literal course lectures from like Ivy League universities, but also a lot more frequently, just kind of general talks, right? Like when you'll have somebody come and guest speak at a university or a campus. Dude, that's all for free on YouTube for everyone. And and I have to imagine the reason why there was a bit of gatekeeping for you, it wasn't because these schools are like, how dare the peasants hear what this historian has to say about Napoleon. It was just the logistics. Like, well, we can only fit so many people in a hall, and you can't just do anyone comes in it. But that's all gone. Like, the idea, like sharing information has gotten so much cheaper in the last few years. Why are we not seeing it as far as tuition goes? I guess that's my question. We did an interview with a really interesting individual. Going to be posting the interview tomorrow, actually, about kind of social media and the tech industry. But he brought up a very interesting point. And he said that really a lot of the kind of big brains in America, I'm paraphrasing, right? They're going into developments in information tech, right? Like, we have made so much developments in just kind of like the sharing of information, right? Ways for people to communicate, reach out to each other. We have advanced so far, so quickly. Yet, just schools, just going to cost more money forever. Just more. Forever. It's like, but the thing you do, like your chief service, the teaching, right? I understand the access to the professor. That'll always be limited. It's only one professor, right? But aside from direct access, I mean, just to hear what the professor has to say, to see the materials, dude, that stuff you could do cheaper now than you used to be able to. Like the lecture hall experience stuff, like just people sitting in like what amounts to a lecture hall, that is way cheaper now than it used to be. All of it is. So why is it not getting passed on to the American, right? Not only say that because just the people taking on the student loan debt is more what I mean, right? Why is it not getting passed on to people that are taking this debt on? Why isn't there not more of a system there? Anyway, a couple super chats I want to get into. I think here, Kenneth Booker, a lot of degrees are pointless. You get relevant education from on-the-job experience, even in jobs that require degrees. Exactly. And another reason why, though, again, it's like, well, you could say that, like, maybe you didn't get the job explicitly because you had the degree. Maybe going to get the degree, and in the process of getting the degree, you were introduced to a lot of people and environments that kind of let you get the experience, right? Sly Cactus took 5 years of mechanical engineering, graduated to find out most entry-level engineering jobs we could find needed 2 to 3 years experience. Dude, some of these job posts I'm seeing nowadays are like some of these, like, I love the ones that are like, they're like, you need a master's degree and it pays $20 an hour and you get like 25 hours a week. It's like, dude, what the hell? Why is this the job market? And it's because there is an inflation of some of these degrees. Yeah. Which is another issue. Adam Duffy, do you think there's a way to tailor tax credits or checks for every person based on how much of their loans they've paid off / still have? Well, if you were to do something more discriminate, right? Just like, case by case, there probably is a lot of variables they could look at, right? What school you went to, payment hit, all that stuff. I just always, I don't know. I always prefer universality. I know, like, someone's always getting screwed no matter what. I like universality because even though someone gets screwed in universality as well, at least it's just, we did the same for everyone. That's life, right? And then Sly Cactus, I thought the goal of college was to make money. Well, nowadays college is some of the biggest money machines ever. So. So anyway, there's me. I'm done kvetching about student loans and So little. There we go. Hyperballistic drifter god. I'm gonna pull this up real quick, and then I'll read it out loud so we can take a look at it. But oh, this looks like this goes back. This goes back even 2017. I can't imagine things got any better. Is this it? Here we go. Wow. Now this chart is from 2000. This shows from 2015 to 16. This is a couple of years old in data, but I mean, I cannot imagine things are that much different. So let me see where the chart for this is. So the number of graduates, technical majors, are in blue, and the job openings are in pink. Jesus. Now this is so this is actually projections from 2014 to 2024 for openings. That is really bad for some of these industries. Again, you'll notice computer science, some of these, but like, Jesus, they're projecting 183,000 graduates qualified for life sciences fighting for 12,000 jobs over the next 10 years. Engineering, 169 to 51. This is the New York Times. This isn't rando blog. Math sciences, you'll notice way more graduates than jobs. Here's the other thing you'll notice too. It's like, this isn't, underwater basket weaving or interpretive dance theory, whatever the meme. It's mathematical sciences, physical sciences, engineering. Maybe life sciences, you could say, like sociology and stuff, but again, I think it's more loosely defined a life science, right? Because this does not include healthcare. Healthcare is probably different. Now, computer sciences, there will probably always be an outpacing of jobs for graduates, probably. And here's the thing, is every single year, people are getting mathematical science degrees. Every year they're getting physical science degrees. Every second someone's getting a life science degree. We're not building jobs every second. Well, I thought physical science would be like biology. I thought life sciences would be like, whatever. Again, I'm not a school guy, so I believe you're right. But just point being is that like these aren't nonsense like degrees. These are like people who actually went and studied real, hard, useful things. You'd think, right? Mathematicians, right? Mathematical scientists, physical science, people who study like rocks and geology, stuff that you think's important, right? We don't have places to put these people necessarily. And this is the Bureau of Labor Statistics and the National Center for Education Statistics. This isn't some guy on Twitter. Just I kind of figure as much. I'll post in the New York Times, but they have it here. It's concerning. It really is. Pradiyuma Agaram. How you doing? Some coding jobs will probably be automated away in the future. It's a good point. And here's the thing I was trying to brought up as well early is as you worded that, right? Probably in the future automated away, right? But the thing is, if you're taking out a loan to get a degree to learn how to do this, like you kind of have to project in the future. And that's one of those things that it's just making this all worse and compounding the difficulties we're having with the current student loan system we have. Is because, yeah, man, like you can get a job to be a computer programmer, coding, all that stuff. And again, work your ass off, have like no disrespect, but like a degree where you would think like this is a service I can provide to the world. And just have it be like, honestly, we don't need you. We have enough people. AI and, machine learning has kind of taken away a lot of the grunt work. So we really only have a certain amount of people who do this now. And again, you guys correct me if I'm wrong. I don't think that the federal government will come back to you and say, oh, your job, your industry got automated away? Cool. Well, I forgive I don't think it works that way. Maybe it does, but I don't think it works that way. But again, also, this is the phenomena of getting a degree in one subject and working in another. Hardly unique. A ton of people do that. Because again, a lot of things come from getting a degree that are not necessarily the accreditation that degree gives you in a specific field. There's a lot more that comes with it, right? That is important to keep in perspective. And again, as you pointed out, Prati, that engineering degree gives reasoning skills, which can be broadly applied, not just the specific field of engineering you studied. Exactly. Like if you go to university for multiple years and you're a smart person who learns a lot of smart, useful stuff, there's probably a place for you somewhere. Don't get me wrong. But in some of these fields, you'll just notice like there isn't necessarily going to, like, there's going to be a point where the degree potentially in certain fields starts becoming worth less money as time progresses instead of more, right? The value of the degree will decrease. There'll be just that many more people in the field. There'll be just that many more people every year in the field. There'll be just that many more things changing in the field where your experience maybe doesn't get, you kind of get, the experience is kind of disjointed a bit where it's like, for example, it's hard to have experience in a program that became industry standard 15 months ago, right? Like if that's when everyone started using it, well, like it's hard to have 5 years experience in it if no one does. You see, like, so it's really, I don't know. I can talk in circles forever on this. It's just, those are a couple of the chief concerns. I want to make sure that what appears to me to be the bad decision making from people in the government and the financial institutions and the colleges, which led us into the situation where we have people that are just not everyone. A lot of people just find a way to pay their loans off just fine, don't get me wrong, but a large percentage of people who are getting degrees, feeling just burdened and saddled with debt that they're never going to be able to pay the degree off of, and just kind of creating this bloated system of people that are taking money from the federal government, giving it to universities, and then owing money to the federal government. It isn't working. It's led to the situation we're in now, where we're talking about just federally having the executive branch wave a wand and remove tens of thousands of dollars of debt per student. It's gotten to that point where they're considering something that drastic. They've already froze interest rates, set them to zero. No more payments are being taken because of the pandemic. I mean, like, yes, this clearly, I'm an economist or something, but it feels like a bubble bursted or is about to. This gravy train where schools just jack up tuition and the government just jacks up, not interest, but the government just keeps taking money from people. I don't know. A couple more super chats. Again, Prati, the whole concept of a 4-year college might go out the window in the future since there are things like Coursera. By the way, I am an engineer. Very cool. And again, yeah, something else I was talking about as well with just, it doesn't make sense to me. I brought this up before, but just bring it up again. It doesn't make sense to me that it's costing so much more money. I understand it's getting cheaper in some ways, right? But like, it's so much cheaper to teach people now than it used to be. Why are some schools charging just more and more and more and more and more and more every semester just down the line forever? It's like, isn't your job getting easier? Aren't you able to hire less people? Aren't you able to have less people take care of more tasks? That's how it's going in a lot of other industries. I mean, to your point, Coursera, like, can't you have a lot of maybe some of these like classes where you had to pay for people to be on? Like, can you move some of these to more like online decentralized things? Maybe if you're a university that really, really, really is known for your law school, you can focus even more on it then, right? Like, why is it that it's like, no, we're just going to keep bloating things and taking money from people? Adam Duffy said a PhD in being a baller, and then Adam Duffy, a bachelor's in oracling. I'm reading it backwards. Top, code's degrees and master's in problem solving, a bachelor's in oracling, and a PhD in being a baller. You are too kind. Thank you very much, my friend. And then Luis Torilla, me and names, I apologize, man. I'm the worst with them. Computer science is not about coding, but rather problem solving. No, I mean, I agree. Again, I don't want to make it sound like there's a bunch of people that are like, oh no, I got my degree and now I can't do anything. It's not my point. My only point is that there does seem to be, as time goes on, this sense that in a lot of industries, there's just, the field is crowding with other qualified candidates that I'm sure are problem solvers, smart, capable people as well. So even though you're paying what your degree used to be worth, it's worth something new now. That's the only point I'm trying to bring up there. So here we go. Probably going to wrap it up here in the next minute or two. So any other questions you guys want to ask, let me know. Any other, I don't know, anything. If not, again, tomorrow we'll be posting the interview, kind of talking about some of the other stuff going on culturally and stuff like this. Going to be posting an interview with a former Facebook employee, just about kind of what he saw working in the actual main Facebook campus and just kind of general conversation on social media, kind of where this country's headed with social media, kind of in general, one thing I guess I mentioned this in the interview if you guys watched it, but one takeaway I thought was interesting. There does seem to be this sense I got from him and others as well, not just one individual. A lot of people have seen this sense where you kind of saw this happening. I wasn't alive, but you can go back and watch the movies and read the literature and read the articles. It's all out there still. There was a lot of people kind of at the end of like that 80s yuppie Wall Street rush, right? A lot of people that were just like, man, it feels like we work in this industry where it's like you make all this money and all this stuff happens, but it feels like what we're doing is actually bad for the country and we're not actually helping people. We're just like buying and selling meaningless stuff. People are going in debt. It's not good for the country, but I make all this money. It's not rewarding. I don't know. I don't think it's good. A lot of people are kind of coming to that. It seems to be in social media as well, right? We're making all this money, but like, are what we're doing actually good for society? Am I actually making an impact? Am I helping? Like, I'm starting to see some of this similar kind of where you do have these industries where so much money and you have all this stuff. But that, as well as talking about just some of the way the social media companies are incentivized financially to make our lives hell as well. Any beer tonight? No, not yet at least. No. No reason. Just didn't pick one up. Sly Cactus, could we have one day where we go un-American and federally just wipe the slate clean and everything and then go back to normal and see what happens? Oof. Everything is considerably worse. I've noted. Adam Duffy, ahem, everyone drop a like on the stream. Yeah, like, or as always, feel free to drop a dislike if you disagree on anything you heard in the stream today. Which, it's kind of a trick because I'm assuming there's going to be something you heard you disagree with in here. But if overwhelmingly you disagree, hey, I love to hear it. I really do. But either way, guys, hope you had a good time. I had a lot of fun. I always have a lot of fun on these streams. Again, posting a video tomorrow. Hoping to have videos up again in the... I say it all the time. Don't even believe me. I'm a liar. But daily uploads. Well, streams on Monday and Thursday with uploads in between. That is coming back. You will see a video tomorrow, so keep an eye out for that. And we'll be posting some more stuff moving forward as well. But again, in the meantime, everybody, have a great rest of your evening. Have a great rest of your week, and I'll be seeing you pretty soon. Take care.